And today, we're jumping straight into the deep end. We're looking at round 2, group 9.
Okay.
And this is where things get really interesting for you, the listener, because the albums in this group, they aren't just good albums. They're veterans. They've already survived a pretty brutal first round of elimination.
They're battle-tested already.
Exactly. And we refer to this particular collection of finalists by the, highly descriptive title the author gave it. It's a title made up from the names of the contenders themselves.
Which is?
The Fat Tongue Bleeds in the Fire Within.
Okay. The fat tongue bleeds in the fire within. That certainly sets a dramatic stage, doesn't it?
It does. It hints at the mix.
Let's introduce the 4 albums for you, the listener. You can judge their merit right along with us as we go.
All right. First up, a blast of 80s rock extravagance. Slip of the Tongue by Whitesnake.
Okay, classic rock.
Second, the electronic boundary breaker. The one that apparently fundamentally changed the author's whole perspective on music. Fat of the Land by the Prodigy.
Whoa, okay, big shift there.
Number 3.
Third, what you might call the definition of early 2000s rock consistency. A masterpiece of balance. Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World.
Ah, right. A big one.
And finally,
the real dark horse of the group. The album that demanded patience, subtle appreciation, Fire Within by Birdy.
Wow. So you've got Whitesnake, Prodigy, Jimmy Eat World, Birdy, hair metal, aggressive electronica, polished rock, soulful pop. That is a dramatic showdown.
It really is. This specific group is like a perfect microcosm of the whole challenge of this album quest.
Yeah.
You know, comparing apples, oranges, and highly aggressive sampled synthesizers.
Definitely not an easy task.
Okay, so before we dive into the albums themselves in this round, it's really impossible to appreciate the intensity of round 2 without knowing who these albums beat to get here.
Right, you need the context.
Exactly. The stakes are incredibly high because these veterans, they've already proven their mettle. They knocked out major commercial hits, critically acclaimed stuff.
Yeah, that's crucial context, especially for our learner audience. You know, when you're vetting information, you need to know its track record. Who has it already stood up against? Let's start with Whitesnake's Slip of the Tongue. This one, its path was an immediate indicator of just how ruthless this competition scoring is.
Right. Whitesnake landed in round 1, group 11. Now, they qualified in second place. Sounds okay, maybe an easy pass.
Yeah.
But look at who they eliminated to get that second spot. They finished ahead of 2 colossal, era-defining pop albums, Justified from Justin Timberlake.
Wow, Justified.
And the self-titled album, Christina Aguilera.
Hold on. Wait, you're telling me a Whitesnake album from '89? Which, let's be honest, some hardcore Whitesnake fans even think is, a bit past their prime. That album finished ahead of JT's Justified and Christina's debut. Albums that completely dominated the early 2000s. Global hits.
That's what the results say.
That is genuinely shocking. I mean, if you remember the sheer ubiquity of Crimea River or Dirty, that's incredible.
It absolutely is. And it speaks volumes about what the author valued in the listening process. Maybe enduring songwriting quality within that Whitesnake album, even with its flaws, which we'll definitely get into.
Okay.
But they didn't win their group. They qualified second because they ultimately lost out to a pure metal contender, Power and the Glory by Saxon. So it shows that while Whitesnake could, dismiss pop royalty in this format, they couldn't quite top classic, aggressive heavy metal.
Right. So Whitesnake enters round 2, having proven something important about the quest itself. It seems to prioritize maybe longevity, rock structure, over that immediate commercial flash and polish.
That seems fair, yeah. Okay, next up, let's look at Jimmy Eat World's path. Their experience was different. Their album, Bleed American.
Yeah.
It was in round 1, group 85. They qualified first. Clear dominance over their competition.
Okay, so they sailed through. Who are they up against?
Well, significant competition. They finished ahead of Marauder by the classic Southern rockers Blackfoot.
Okay.
And, maybe more impressively, the compilation singles by the hugely influential electronic and new wave band Depeche Mode.
Depeche Mode, wow. Okay, so taking first place against strong classic rock and established electronic giants like Depeche Mode, that gives Bleed American serious momentum coming into this round.
Absolutely. It was definitely pegged as a front runner early on because of that strong showing.
Makes sense. All right, who's next?
Then we shift gears dramatically to the Prodigy with Fat of the Land. They came through round 1, group 165, also clinched first place.
Another first place finish.
Yeah. And their group really showed the sheer diversity of music in this whole quest.
Oh, yeah. Who did they beat?
Get this. They finished ahead of the band Wheatus, Teenage Dirtbag.
Huh, yeah, okay.
A commercial pop of Overcome by Alexandra Burke.
Right.
and the massive stadium rock of Only by the Night by Kings of Leon.
Kings of Leon, too. Wow. So Fat of the Land's aggressive, powerful sound, even years later, was strong enough to beat everything from, like, infectious pop-punk to huge contemporary indie rock anthems.
Seems so.
Yeah.
The author felt it still sounds necessary, edgy.
Interesting. Okay, and the final contender, Birdy.
And finally, yes, the eventual dark horse, Birdy's Fire Within, came out of round 1, group 191, also clinching first place.
Another #1 qualifier.
And demonstrating remarkable strength in a group that was packed with, like, UK alternative rock giants.
Really? Who was in that group?
Birdy finished ahead of some seriously strong anthemic rock albums. You've got Fallen Empires by Snow Patrol,
Years.
Performance and Cocktails by Stereophonics,
Classic.
and One Way Ticket to Hell and Back by The Darkness.
Good grief. That is a group defined by huge guitars, soaring vocals, stadium sing-alongs. The fact that Birdy's more subtle, emotive, piano-driven work beat all of them, that's a massive early signal of its quality, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
So when you look at this round 2 group lineup, Whitesnake, who dismissed pop giants, Jimmy Eat World, who dominated rock history and synth pop legends, Prodigy, who crushed contemporary indie and pop punk, and Birdy, who somehow overcame established alternative anthems.
Yeah.
This group, the Fat Tongue bleeds in the Fire Within. It's a truly brutal field. Just verified winners.
It absolutely sets the stage for a dramatic contest. The stakes feel astronomical now. These aren't just good albums. They're albums that have already been battle-tested against some massive names in music history.
Exactly. And that pressure cooker of round 2, the repeated back-to-back listening, it's designed specifically to expose any weakness they might still have.
Okay, let's start our direct comparison then. Let's talk about the hard rock veterans first, Whitesnake, and dive into Slip of the Tongue. Now, you mentioned the author has history here. For them, this album is heavily anchored in nostalgia, right? Which must play a complex role in this quest.
It really does. Nostalgia is, well, it's both a strength and a potential weakness in this kind of process. The author recalled as being a huge Whitesnake fan by the mid-90s, even owning, like, the massive Metal Trilogy box set.
Right.
But that historical affection, that fondness, it's often at war with critical judgment, particularly when you talk about Whitesnake's really dramatic shift in the 1980s.
Yeah, the classic hair metal conflict, as people call it. Fans who love the band's earlier, bluesier stuff, you know, the pre-1982 sound.
Yeah, the Coverdale Marsden era.
Right, they often struggle with the massive production, the synths, the big hair of the later MTV era. It's almost like an ideological split within the fan base.
It really is. Yeah. And the author, to his credit, seems to be attempting to be impartial here. He notes, you know, he can't just shun classics like Still of the Night or Is This Love from the huge '87 album just because of the genre label. He appreciates the massive hooks, the slick production.
Okay.
But Slip of the Tongue, the album in this group, introduces a very specific and potentially fatal flaw, according to his notes.
Okay, what's that?
It's the Steve Vai factor.
Ah, the guitarist.
Exactly. Vai, the virtuoso, replaced Adrian Vandenberg, who got injured. And Vai's technical approach, it just dominates the sonic landscape of this album.
Right. He's technically brilliant, obviously, but how does that become a flaw?
Well, the critique here is very specific.
Yeah.
Vai's style is defined by the author as overplaying. He's a technical genius, no doubt. But the feeling is that his skill actually undermines the songs themselves.
How so?
Well, if we get technical for a second, Vai's signature sound, you know, those rapid-fire arpeggios, the aggressive whammy bar dives and effects, the sweeping scale runs, the author feels it just screeches across the mix.
Okay, so it's too much instead of serving the song.
Exactly. Instead of using his incredible skill to serve the underlying bluesy structure, which is David Coverdale's core strength as a vocalist and songwriter, Vai's virtuosity apparently just, quote, treads all over the record.
Wow. So it's like a technical masterpiece that maybe lacks emotional restraint or space for the song. That could be a huge subjective drawback when you're comparing it against other albums aiming for best ever.
Precisely. It creates this conflict. You've got these potentially great songs struggling to breathe under the weight of, well, excessive technical guitar playing.
Right.
Yet, despite this pretty major issue, the author still deems the album solid overall. You know, there are melodic highlights like the reworked version of Fool for Your Loving, Wings of the Storm, and that gorgeous ballad Sailing Ships.
Yeah.
So it's considered a good album, but with this significant identifiable flaw. It sounds like the author had to actively kind of compartmentalize his listening experience to appreciate the good parts past the guitar fireworks.
Makes sense. Okay, now let's pivot immediately. Complete opposite end of the sonic spectrum. The Prodigy with Fat of the Land. We're moving from calculated, maybe slightly flawed rock anthems to just pumping aggressive sampled electronica.
Total shift. And this album, released back in '97, is remarkable because, as the author notes, it still sounds edgy and dangerous even today.
Yeah, it really does hold up.
It's defined by those pumping electronica beats and high-tech sampling. But the author's initial reaction to this music, this provides one of the most important philosophical insights of this entire album quest.
Okay. Tell us about that personal evolution, because the author admits he was initially, quote, no fan of dance music.
Not at all.
Yeah.
A self-confessed rock purist, absolutely. He recalls the shock of seeing the Firestarter video when it hit #1 on, like, Top of the Pops back in the day.
Yeah, that video was intense.
He says back in '97, he would never have ranked this album anywhere near a Whitesnake album. It was classic rock sensibility meeting the electronic revolution head-on, and initially, yeah, the rock purist was winning that internal battle.
That kind of purism, that genre loyalty, it can be such a powerful barrier, can't it? As learners, we often stick to the genres of knowledge we already know, the rock and roll of research, the history we feel comfortable with. So what broke the mold for him? How did he get past that?
It was forced exposure, actually.
Yeah.
Which is maybe an invaluable lesson for any learner, right? He was introduced to a compilation tape by his brother-in-law that featured artists like Future Sound of London.
Ah, okay.
The author describes that music as weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. But critically, that exposure, that forced listen, made him develop an appreciation for electronica and dance music. He was confronted with quality he just couldn't deny, even if it totally defied his ingrained rock and roll sensibilities.
Okay, this feels like the core philosophical takeaway here, and we should probably spend a moment on it because it translates way beyond music, doesn't it? That moment of realization, forget the genre bullshit and just try it.
Exactly. It's the difference between seeking confirmation, looking for stuff you already agree with, and seeking expansion. That willingness to move beyond your established tastes, to admit that maybe a new genre of music or, a new economic theory or completely different historical interpretation actually holds value, even if it goes against your initial bias.
Yeah.
That's what makes this quest, and honestly, the learning process in general, so valuable.
Yeah.
The Prodigy album became, in a way, the philosophical catalyst for the whole project for him.
Wow. And despite its aggressive nature, Fat of the Land is just undeniable in its quality, isn't it? Tracks like just the visceral beat of Smack My Bitch Up, or the surprisingly deep, almost chill-out anthem Narayan, and obviously the relentless energy of Breathe. It ensured it remained a powerful force in this group.
Absolutely. So when comparing these two veterans, Slip of the Tongue and Fat of the Land, the author finds there's, quote, really nothing between them in terms of overall quality.
Right.
They're both seen as solid and engaging from start to finish. Both have, more than a couple of standout tracks.
So objectively, on technical merit, general engagement, they're pretty much tied. This is where the methodology of the album quest really throws the subjective reality of pace into sharp relief, doesn't it? How did the author break the tie between, aggressive dance philosophy and nostalgic hard rock?
Well, the tiebreaker came down to the most human, least analytical measure possible.
Yeah.
He admits he edged the win just slightly to Whitesnake, simply because, during those intensive multiple listening sessions, Whitesnake was the one he'd been humming and singing the most around the house.
No way. The ultimate metric of just unconscious, pervasive engagement, critical analysis, technical flaws, philosophical shifts, all took a backseat to simply being the album that got stuck in his head the most.
Apparently so. It's a fantastic, honest revelation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes that raw, subjective, emotional connection just triumphs over all the high-minded critique.
Amazing. Okay, so for the mid-group standings, we have Whitesnake just slightly edging out the Prodigy, putting Whitesnake third and Prodigy fourth, which means they're both in immediate danger of elimination as we move to the two other powerhouse contenders.
Exactly. The pressure shifts now.
All right, now we really ratchet up the tension. We move to the face-off between the initial favorite, Jimmy Eat World's Bleed American, and the subtle challenger, Birdy's Fire Within. The expectation early on, based on what you said, was that this would be a fight between instant gratification and maybe sustained depth.
That's a good way to frame it. Bleed American is, well, it's a monumental album in its own right. It's referred to in the notes as the band's agile fourth studio album, the one that really launched them into the mainstream, sold over 1 million copies.
Yeah, it was huge.
This is the sound of a band just perfecting its formula and hitting its commercial and artistic peak pretty much simultaneously.
And the genius of it, and probably why it was pegged as the potential winner early on, is that balance it achieves, right? The author notes it delivers the band's vision for rock and roll without compromise. They somehow layered these really accessible pop hooks, the kind that grab you instantly.
Yeah, they're super catchy.
While still retaining, quote, serious rock oomph.
That balance is absolutely critical. It's accessible enough for commercial radio, definitely, but it's also structurally and lyrically dense enough to satisfy, more serious rock listeners. This blending of genres, making something that's both instantly gratifying and lyrically introspective, that gives it incredible momentum in a direct comparison situation like this.
And lyrically, the album holds up under scrutiny too, doesn't it? Explores autobiographical stuff, positive introspection, alongside, those obligatory but well-done heartbreak tracks like Your House. The emotional range feels wide, but the musical delivery is just incredibly consistent.
That consistency is perhaps the strongest argument for its initial presumed victory. The source flat out states there is not a bad song here. From the punchy opener, Bleed American, all the way through to the gentler ballad, My Sundown. It's described as a near-flawless, immediate album experience. So yeah, based on the first listen, maybe even the second or third, Bleed American probably seemed like the definitive winner of Group 9.
But Birdy, this is an album quest built on endurance, not just immediate impact. And that brings us to the ultimate dark horse, Birdy's Fire Within. This is where the methodology, the whole multi-listen process, truly earned its stripes, because this album demanded something, well, almost physically and mentally draining from the listener.
Yeah, the effort required here is really the defining story of this whole group. Fire Within, the notes say, contains truly lovely songs, defined by very emotional, delectable vocals, mostly slow-tempo piano and vocal ballads.
Okay.
But the author acknowledges right up front that it requires a little bit of effort at times.
That effort, it must contrast so sharply with the driving beats of Jimmy Eat World or Prodigy, for that matter. If you're comparing soft, subtle piano arrangements against high-octane rock or electronica back-to-back, the sheer volume and immediate energy of the louder albums could easily just drown out Birdy's subtlety, couldn't it?
Easily. The quality here is defined by composition, texture, emotion. Not power in the traditional sense. The author deliberately contrasts Birdy's vocals with someone known for raw power, like, say, Christina Aguilera, who Whitesnake beat in round 1.
Right.
Birdy doesn't rely on vocal acrobatics or sheer volume. She relies on the quiet power of the songs themselves and the emotional delivery.
And this is where those 6 or 7 listens become the absolute key dramatic pivot point. I mean, think about the physical requirement of the quest. Listening to 4 distinct full albums back-to-back repeatedly. The author had to commit hours, maybe days, just to this one group comparison. And Birdy only revealed its full strength after half a dozen full album cycles.
It's a real testament to critical persistence. The author kind of describes this struggle, the initial challenge of focusing on the subtlety, when maybe his ears were still ringing from Prodigy or craving the immediate hit of the Jimmy Eat World rock tracks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But he committed to the process, and this persistence, this refusal to make a snap judgment, it unlocks the aha moment for this album.
So what were the tracks that eventually won him over?
Well, the album is apparently dense with tracks that only truly reveal their power upon deep familiarity. The notes mention specifically Strange Birds, No Angel, Light Me Up, Words as Weapons, and the Trad Home, described simply as gorgeous. These are songs that, yeah, they require you to meet them halfway. They don't shout for attention.
Right.
And once that effort was expended, once he got past the initial hurdle, the connection became profound. The author notes that the fire started to burn within him, a nice play on the album title, and Fire Within eventually rose to the top. It's the ultimate victory for that slow burn quality over instant recognition. It took time, effort, focus to appreciate the emotional depth, but once that connection was finally made, it completely surpassed the immediate pleasure offered by the other albums in the group.
I have to interject here because this feels so important for anyone listening, especially the learner type. Why would the author choose to put himself through that mental strain, 6 or 7 times listening to 4 albums back to back?
Yeah.
That sounds like musical endurance bordering on, well, torture. Was it just to fulfill the rules of his quest, or did he genuinely believe the potential payoff was there, even when it was hard going?
That's really the essence of the quest, isn't it?
Yeah.
The rules exist specifically to counteract that initial bias, that listening fatigue that might favor the immediate hit. The author's goal isn't just to rank the music he already likes best. It's to force a deeper appreciation, potentially, for music that might initially be overshadowed or require more work. He committed to the process, understanding that patience, that persistence, is sometimes a prerequisite for finding those hidden gems, the ones that don't reveal everything on the first date, so to speak. The payoff wasn't just following the rules. It was the discovery itself, the realization that the subtle work, the one that required the most concentration, actually ended up having the deepest, most lasting emotional resonance for him in this context.
That makes a lot of sense. It validates the whole grueling process. Okay, so we arrive at the final rankings of round 2, group 9, The Fat Tongue Bleeds and The Fire Within. We saw Whitesnake and Prodigy effectively eliminate each other in the mid-ranks, separated only by the author's unconscious humming tendency.
Yeah, that memorable tiebreaker.
And then we had the brutal face-off between the instantaneous rock classic Jimmy Eat World and the slow burn emotional experience that was Birdy.
And the result.
Yeah.
Well, it serves as a complete validation of that grueling methodology we just discussed.
Let's reveal the final outcome then. Where did they land?
Okay. In 4th place, and eliminated from the quest, Fat of the Land by the Prodigy. A philosophical victory for the author's journey, perhaps, but a competitive loss here.
Okay, Prodigy out. And third?
In 3rd place, also eliminated, Slip of the Tongue by Whitesnake. Nostalgia and those catchy tunes just weren't enough in the end to overcome the technical distraction of the guitar work and the strength of the top 2.
Right, so Whitesnake out too. Which means the 2 albums proceeding to round 3 are?
In 2nd place, advancing, Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World.
Okay, 2nd place for the early favorite. And that means...
And in a stunning upset, taking 1st place in the group, Fire Within by Birdy.
Wow. So the initial favorite, the album pegged as the group winner early on. Because of its sheer consistency, its immediate impact, Jimmy Eat World was ultimately usurped by the album requiring the most effort, the most patience, Fire Within. That is an incredible conclusion for this group.
It really is. And this outcome, it just screams one message loud and clear.
Yeah.
Immediate accessibility is often, maybe not always, but often, a mask for more transient pleasure.
Yeah.
If this quest, this specific group ranking, had been based on just a single casual listen, the rankings would likely have been completely different. Jimmy Eat World probably would have won, hands down. Birdy might have struggled to even make the top 3 against the immediate power of Prodigy and Whitesnake.
That's a really good point. And the elimination context is just as telling, isn't it? Both Whitesnake and Prodigy were praised in the notes as being solid and engaging from start to finish. They were objectively great albums by most standards.
Absolutely.
But against the sustained emotional consistency that the author eventually found in the top 2, they just couldn't compete in the long run under this specific pressure. That subjective humming tiebreaker that Whitesnake won over Prodigy suddenly meant absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of advancement.
Exactly. The essential lesson here, maybe especially for you, the learner-listener, is that the methodology is the master. This is such a powerful demonstration of how context and, crucially, that repeated exposure, the 5th, 6th, 7th listen, can entirely redefine a subjective ranking.
Yeah.
It ended up prioritizing the deep emotional connection that was developed over 6 or 7 hours of close comparative listening over the immediate rock and roll impact, or even that comfortable, superficial familiarity of nostalgia.
We should also maybe consider the implications for the albums that didn't win the top spot. Jimmy Eat World delivered near perfection on the first listen. Birdy delivered its profound reward on, the 7th. Both clearly prove they have lasting quality, but the quest, in this instance, ultimately selected the album that demonstrated growth and revealed its depth under duress.
Right. The album that demanded patience, the one that required active engagement from the listener, ultimately won the group. That's a massive lesson, I think, applicable far beyond just music taste. So Birdy and Jimmy Eat World, they now proceed to the difficult terrain of round 3 of the album quest, having proven they have serious staying power, both through that instant quality and through sustained, hard-won emotional resonance.
A fascinating outcome.